Imagine the scene in the Vatican, a place full of centuries of history and spiritual importance. Wrapped in one solemn but sacred atmosphere, the Pope John Paul II, symbol of faith and resilience, spends its last days in silent devotion. Despite his condition of weakness, he stood firm in his commitment to guide humanity with his words. And then, in the middle of these reflections, the Pope's thought he directed a person with whom few would associate him in his spiritual mission, Donald Trump, who prompted you to speak out. Trump was a prophetic vision, divine revelation, or perhaps a warning of what was to come. These questions are at the heart of our today's exploration, as we discover the truth behind the enigmatic last words of the Pope. 1. Paul, in moments of reflection, when the world seems to stop, certain revelations can shake deeply our beliefs. One of these revelations occurred in the last days of Pope John Paul I, as he lay on his deathbed. Fragile voice transmitted messages that resonated far beyond the walls of his residence. In the Vatican, his reflections on the Gospel, particularly the story of Christ resurrected and the doubting Thomas, were fundamental in their final teachings. Through this narrative, he highlighted the unlimited mercy of God, one mercy that surpasses all things understanding and touches every soul. Between these messages are unexpected comments on Donald Trump. They sparked a wave of intrigue and speculation that he may have seen the Pope in Donald Trump, who at that time was far from being the political power that would become unraveled together. The mysterious last words of the Pope John Paul I, and let us explore his surprising implications for our today's world. As we move forward, several questions arise. What were they? The circumstances of the last moments of the Pope, why he chose to speak of Donald Trump, a figure apparently distant from his spiritual concerns. Immediate and most importantly, what do these revelations mean for we who live in a world that often feels more uncertain and divided than ever? To understand the depth of these questions, we must first go back to the days before the of April of 205. Pope John Paul I, in front of immense physical suffering, was dedicated to the time left for a deep prayer. His focus was unwavering. He did not pray for himself, but for the world that so much loved. His messages, imbued with divine insight, was only revealed fully after his death, leaving us a profound legacy about the to reflect on. At the end of his life, Pope John Paul I's devotion to his faith and his humanity never wavered. Despite of his fragile health, he remained a symbol of resilience and strength. The Pope spent his last days spiritually in the Vatican, surrounded by a small circle of collaborators and confidants. Closed during this period, the Pope's activities focused on the prayer, meditation, and writing. He meticulously wrote messages destined for the world, full of guidance, spiritual, and reflections on the state of humanity. These messages, kept private until after his death, revealed a man deeply concerned about the future and the moral challenges that awaited him. Pope John Paul's dedication to God, it was evident in every aspect of his life, but became even more remarkable as he approached him. His moments final saw his suffering not as a burden, but as a way to unite more closely with Christ in his weak state. He found consolation in his faith, transforming his suffering in a powerful testimony of their belief in God's plan. Their prayers were not for relief from his pain, but for strength and guidance for their followers. Prayed fervently that the Church, its leaders, and all Christians remained firm in their faith. I was particularly concerned about the challenges of secularism and moral relativism that threatened the spiritual foundation of the society. Between the messages he wrote, several topics were highlighted, including the importance of divine mercy, taking advantage of its deep connection with the message of divine mercy revealed to Saint Faustin Kowalski. This message that he promoted throughout his papacy was a call to trust in it mercy of God and seek the forgiveness and renewal. Also spoke of the need for surveillance, spiritual warning against the growing influence of materialism and the loss of spiritual values in modern society. Called all the people to return to a life of prayer, seeking to be a guide for the people in their daily lives and encouraging them to act with compassion and justice towards others. In one of his reflections, More Powerful wrote about the challenges that the Church and its followers would face in the years to come, predicted a period of great struggle spiritual, in which the faithful would have to stand firm against the forces of evil. His words served as warning and beacon of hope, encouraging to believers to stand firm in their faith in the face of adversity. In the Pope John Paul's latest messages was central to the topic of the mercy, believed that in a world ever increasingly divided and full of conflicts, the message of God's mercy, it was more crucial than ever to urge everyone to embrace that mercy, to forgive the others, already look for the reconciliation, believe that this was the path to true peace and unity. Particularly moving were his reflections on reading the Gospel, where the resurrected Christ is appeared to the apostles and showed his pierced hands, established parallels between Thomas's incredulity and the skepticism of the modern world towards faith by inviting Thomas to play his wounds. Christ revealed the depth of God's love and mercy, a love that John Paul felt necessary reiterate to the world. In his last prayer, the Pope begged Jesus, "I trust in you mercy on us and on the whole world." This simple but profound prayer sums up his belief in the redemptive power of God's mercy, was a prayer for humanity, a plea for divine intervention in a world plagued by sin and suffering. As that his health continued to deteriorate, thoughts of John Paul, increasingly directed towards the future foresaw time when the world would face moral challenges and unprecedented spirituality, spoke about the growing influence of Satan and the need for Christians remain vigilant and firm in your faith, predicted that as the world advanced technologically and economically, would also face an increase corresponding in complacency, spiritual and moral decay. The Pope's warnings were serious, but also full of hope. I believed that through faith, prayer and adherence to the commandments of God, humanity could overcome these challenges. In their last moments, when he no longer had strength to speak, continued praying in silence. His last thoughts were for the world, for its redemption and for the strength of the faithful to resist the temptations and trials that were to come. His unwavering faith and his deep concern for the well-being spiritual of humanity were a testimony of his deep love and dedication. In his final reflections, the Pope John Paul, I found inspiration in a specific reading of the Gospel that resonated deeply with him. This extract, taken from the Gospel of John, describes the appearance of Christ resurrected to the apostles, where it shows her pierced hands. A powerful scene takes place 8 days after the resurrection, when Jesus appears to the disciples, gathered in a locked room filled with fear and uncertainty. Thomas, often referred to as Doubting Thomas, was present at the first appearance of Jesus and expressed his skepticism, declared that he would not believe until I could see and touch them. Christ swoons when Jesus reappears and invites Thomas to touch his wounds. Thomas's doubt becomes faith deep and exclaims, "My Lord and my God." We are called to walk by faith and not by sight. According to the second epistle to Corinthians 5 verse 7, the disciples had counted on the visible presence of Jesus, some since 3 years ago, but now it was time to lean on his invisible presence. The disciple Thomas was an example of someone who still, I was not prepared to walk by faith. I only trusted what I could see and experience through your senses. The disciples were entering into a new relationship with the Lord, one that would require walking by faith, not by sight. Thomas wanted to see and feel before believing that Christ had really risen. When the Lord invited Thomas to play the nail marks in his hands, Thomas no longer needed to feel the nail impressions or the hole of the spear. He knelt down and said, "Sir mine and my God." We must recognize that the time he saw Jesus, Thomas did not hesitate. But the Lord does not want us to believe just because what we see. God is a spirit. Invisible Jesus wants us to believe in him, and we eat with him because we hear the word of God, not because we see the Lord with our natural eyes. Then Jesus, he looked into the future and saw us all, we his followers, Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen have believed." John 29. Jesus pronounces, "Then a special blessing. Blessed are those who have not seen have believed." John 29. This statement is a call to faith that transcends need for physical evidence, invitation to trust in the testimony of the gospel and the spiritual presence of Christ. John Paul II saw in this episode a fundamental lesson for the contemporary church, believed that the true faith did not depend on evidence tangible, but of deep trust in the mercy and love of God. This faith, exemplified by the Thomas transformation, was what I wanted all Christians embrace, especially in times of doubt, difficulty. The message was clear: faith in the risen Christ brings hope and redemption, even in the darkest moments. While meditating this passage, Pope John Paul continued. He reflected on the need for faith, renewed and vigorous in the modern world. He saw Thomas's unbelief as a reflection of contemporary doubts and the need for a personal encounter with Christ. Even without the presence physics, his final message, based on the mercy and faith, was a call to humanity to embrace the redemptive message of the gospel and trust in the presence constant of Christ in their lives, as well as their last words and thoughts. It became a spiritual legacy lasting that inspired the faithful to seek a deeper connection on with God, not through vision, but through a faith unbreakable. In the enclosures silent and sacred of the Vatican, reflections of Pope John Paul I. They turned towards an unexpected figure, Donald Trump. At the time of his death in 2005, Trump was known mainly as an extravagant businessman and reality TV star, away from the political force that would become. However, the contemplations of the Pope included comments that showed the future importance of Trump. Juan Pablo's comments on Trump were enigmatic, but undeniably deep. Mentioned Trump in the context of future events global, suggesting that it would amount to a great position and would play a crucial role in the shaping the future of the world. These observations revealed posthumously. They provoked important intrigues and debates. Why Pope John Paul I, spiritual leader focused on divine mercy and faith, would feel that Trump could have an important, significant, what he saw in Trump that deserves so much attention. To understand the Pope's comments about Trump, it is necessary to know the nature of prophecy and the role of spiritual leaders in the interpretation of divine messages. Pope John Paul I was known for his deep spirituality and his ability to perceive and articulate the God's will. Therefore, his reflections on Trump should be seen through the lens of discernment, spiritual, and the prophetic vision. In the Catholic faith, prophecy often involves predict events that are in line with divine plans and warnings. Pope's comments on Trump may be seen as a prophetic vision, glimpse into the future provided by divine inspiration. This vision was referring only to Trump as an individual, but to the broader implications of its all power. The reflections of the Pope, they suggested that Trump's influence, it could have a considerable impact on the global stage, shaping not only the politics, but also the aspects cultural and spiritual, indicated a period of significant changes where Trump's actions would act as catalyst for events, both positive and negative. This duality, it is a common theme in messages prophetic that highlights the complexity of human free will and the divine providence. In the years after the death of Pope John Pablo I, the rise of Donald Trump, it was truly dramatic. For many, Trump's actions and rhetoric have had profound implications both for the United States as for the world. Analyze Trump's role in the contemporary events requires a balanced approach, recognizing both their achievements and their context. Reverses his supporters praise their efforts to strengthen the national security, to boost the economic growth, and challenge the established political systems. Critics, however, point to policies divisive, inflammatory rhetoric, and ethical concerns. From a prophetic perspective, the presidency can be seen as a realization of the vision of Pope John Paul I, where the impact of their actions extends to multiple aspects of society. reflecting both progress and the important challenges for the future of Trump's mandate, brought changes significant and triggered debates, global on numerous topics. Whether seen positively or negatively, the Trump's impacts are in line with the Pope's prediction that a figure crucial would influence the course of the world events. The presidency Trump's campaign has left a lasting mark in politics and society Americans, and on the global stage, its ramifications have been significant, challenging both their supporters and critics to deal with complex questions of morality in politics. From a perspective prophetic, these ethical and moral debates highlight the duality of the impact of Trump. His presidency acts as catalyst for critical reflection on the values and principles that they support political and social life. Reflection is essential to understanding the broader importance of its role in the history. Contemporary Trump's relationship with religious communities was one important aspect of his presidency. He gained strong support from Christians, evangelicals, and other religious groups who considered that their policies were aligned with their values. Your administration's stance on issues such as religious freedom probably influenced the visions prophetic of Pope John Paul I that included an awareness of his complexities. His call to mercy, love, and surveillance was a reminder to the faithful to remain firm in their spiritual principles, even while they were sailing through the turbulent waters of political life. The Pope's emphasis on divine mercy serves as guiding principle for assessing impact. Trump from a perspective spiritual. When reflecting on the prophetic vision of Pope John Paul I, it is clear that your comments on Trump's predictions were not just political results, but a call to spiritual consciousness and moral discernment. Click now on the video that appears on your screen to discover all the secrets that what the future holds. I invite you to enjoy and subscribe to our channel. Share this video with others so they can benefit too. Leave a comment below to share your thoughts and experiences. Thank you for watching and joining us on this journey. We'll see you in the next video. Blessings.